Hello, welcome to the Opinionistics. I'm your host, John Maloney, and along with Eric Taylor. Now, introducing from Saskatchewan, Gayle Smith.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello,
how you
Gayle.
doing? How you doing, Gayle?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So, tell me about what you do.
What do? I live in rural Saskatchewan on a horse boarding facility that my husband and I started to built our yard, I guess would be in over 30 years ago. And we started off as cattle ranchers and grain farmers, and then we slowly transitioned over to equine facility. And so I teach riding lessons, and we look after horses and train horses and compete with horses. But I also have just published a book, and so I'm also a writer.
Okay. What books have you written recently?
My book is called Thickwood, and it's a historical novel based in Saskatchewan. It has horses as I guess they're characters in the book, and but it has a wide array of characters, people characters, of course, and horses play part in the story.
Okay, very nice. Any questions, Eric?
I'm still not clear what's the book about.
Okay, the book is a historical novel set after around the end of World War II in Saskatchewan, and it's set in an area of Saskatchewan that's between the prairie and the forest. And a young female protagonist has land that is going to be taken into become a community pasture. In Saskatchewan, we have a tradition, or had a tradition, of community pastures that spanned back to 1939. And so as those pastures were forming, land was gathered together, and sometimes leases were taken over to add to the acreage to make these community pastures. And so that's kind of the backdrop to the story. And my character she has a dream to raise horses and continue on the land and live a rural life. And but then she faces numerous challenges and adversaries along the way. She's also a baseball player. And so I found out in my research that the 63 Canadian women that were recruited to play in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League were also, of those 63 Canadian women, about 25 or so of them were from Saskatchewan. And so that was quite interesting. That's quite a significant number of those baseball players were Saskatchewan women. And so I decided that my character would get recruited to play for the All-American Girls Baseball League. She had roping skills, and I envisioned that being able to rope and throw lasso also meant that you could probably pitch a pretty mean ball. So in fact, she does get recognized for this and goes to play with the league.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. It sounds like a pretty interesting read. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, and like in all in all, it sounds like a pretty good book. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But it's like I also want to know what encouraged you to write this book.
What encouraged me to write it? Well, I've had a muse in my life for my writing life for quite a few years before I started to write the book, and I had this female character in mind, and I just couldn't quit thinking about her, and I explored all kinds of different ways I could tell her story, and I would write short scenes and numerous scenes about her, and then in my writing life I had taken numerous classes and met with writers in residence at libraries and so on and so forth. And so I gradually built a repertoire of writing. And then I finally applied to the Masters of Fine Arts program at the University of Saskatchewan in writing, and I was accepted. And so then I used this premise as with this character and as my thesis project for a historical novel. And at the time that I entered the MFA program, the government of Canada announced that they were ending the PFRA pasture program, the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration program. And that was kind of a shock, I think, for lots of people in Saskatchewan. And so I wanted to write about the historical aspect of the formation phase of the pasture program. I thought that was kind of an interesting take. And so it allowed me to focus on a certain geographical area in Saskatchewan. And I found out that the Royal Community Pasture was the largest pasture in Canada, the largest community pasture, at least in 1962 it was. That pasture itself had 5,000 cattle running in it, just after the war. And so I thought there was quite an interesting, lots of interesting stories to find out about that time in history and that geographical area, along with putting my character into that setting. And so I made a cold call to a pasture manager up in the area. And so I was, very, had lots of trepidation about that cold call, but I phoned up the manager and he allowed me and my husband to take a pack trip into the pasture. I have over the last 10 years or so done numerous pack trips in Saskatchewan, northern Saskatchewan. And that's where you put all your belongings on the back of your horses, maybe take 1 or 2 horses as pack horses, and you put all your belongings on them, and then you go back into the forest and explore and do random camping and explore the wilderness that way. So I wanted to go in this Royal Community Pasture and do the same, and I had to seek permission from Cliff Willock, who was the pasture manager at the time, and who is still the pasture manager there, even though the pasture now has changed its program from a PFRA to a publicly cooperative. I'm confused a little bit, into a citizen-run cooperative pasture.
Yeah, no, I get what you're trying to say. I get. Don't worry.
Sorry. Yeah, I hope. Anyway, so I managed to go on this pack trip in this area and experience firsthand traveling across the landscape with my horses, and I also was able to interview Cliff and another gentleman who worked in the pasture, and I heard all kinds of fascinating stories about life in the community pasture. Stories like roping moose and bears and wolves and old homesteads and falling into old wells and fires and all those. It was just a fascinating opportunity to be able to listen to these stories and then be able to have them inspire my writing for the novel.
Yeah, that definitely does sound like an interesting story, and it's and everything you said definitely is fascinating, which brings me to my next question. I always hear you bringing up this character. What I really want to know is there a specific person who inspired this character, or is this character just is this character, who is this character similar to? Is it similar to you, or is it similar to someone you know? Who truly inspired this character? Because
yeah, I think
what was that say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Who inspired the character? Well, when I first started thinking about her, she's a red-haired character, and I do have a red hair. I know lots of people sometimes find red-haired characters a lot in stories, but I do have a red-haired daughter and a red-haired granddaughter. And so just the striking image of these young women and how beautiful and athletic they are certainly was part of the inspiration. But I also had this image in my mind of, if you can believe it, of Lady Godiva riding on her horse. And so I did spend quite a bit of time in my earlier musings exploring the Lady Godiva legends and all that went on with that. And so just this image of a woman sort of bareback on the horse riding just kind of captured my interest. And I looked at paintings and I read one author's analysis of the Lady Godiva stories. But eventually I kind of moved on from that. But I do have a scene in the novel that is kind of speaks to that experience. And so I kind of have a little bit of that in the muse of the character. I think the other thing is that I wanted to, I had another friend who did a pack trip by herself across Saskatchewan. And so I was quite intrigued how a woman by herself with a few horses would travel across the landscape. And so I interviewed my friend Dana and just admired her courage and strength to be able to manage that and go across the landscape like that. And so she was an inspiration as well. So I think I had a number of ways that
Like inspiration.
Yeah,
you had a number of inspirations that it inspired the character.
yes, and slowly built her and helped me to get a better picture of what she was like. And of course the baseball women, I watched the movie A League of Their Own, and then I saw a small play here in Saskatchewan at a festival, an arts festival, and talking about the women in baseball, and so I loved playing baseball as a child, and so that was definitely a sport I was interested in, and the magic of playing baseball, like it's a timeless sport. There's no clock, where that's keeping track of how long you can play. It can have a whole life and world of its own. And so, certainly baseball and sport was an inspiration, and strong women who broke out of their expectations of the times and were able to pursue that dream and have an opportunity too, because the women in the baseball All-American Girls Baseball League were able to make lots of money for their time, more than their parents were earning often, some of them, especially their parents back in Saskatchewan.
Interesting. And what got you to be an equestrian riding coach?
Oh, I guess I have two passions in my life that have been there ever since I can remember. So from my earliest memories, and that is literature, reading and stories, and also horses. And so it's just been a lifelong passion. I just cannot stay away from horses. They're just within me, and I just am so connected to them. I'm with horses every day, and they're like my friends here on the farm. And I've memories of absolutely inspiring horses over the years. And so some of those horses were also inspiration for my writing. I had a one-eyed horse who was a pack horse, and he took us through lots of interesting experiences. And so he was definitely an inspiration for my writing.
Before we go any further, do you like Old Town Road?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering. You know why I asked that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I like all references to riding and traveling and all those songs and images in literature as well. So yeah, I don't know if you want me to hear more about my horse, but
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
okay. Well, one story that inspired the novel too, I had this other scene that was quite captivating and actually kind of harrowing. Actually, one time my husband and I were up in the forest way back deep along an old fire road, and the national park had built these fire roads in Prince Albert National Park many years ago, probably during the 70s and 80s, and you could kind of see the trails on Google Earth. But when you actually got into the forest and rode them, these trails actually had smaller trees on them, and they were cluttered with fallen trees, and they were very hard to get through. But nevertheless, we persisted on. And there's wild bison in the national park, and they travel and make trails through the park as well. So sometimes they would use these old trails, and they would also go on beaver dams. The beaver would use some of the old bridges as a starting place to build their dams across a waterway. And the bison would then travel across these beaver dams to carry on through the forest. And so we were riding on one of these trails, kind of an old trail, and we came across a beaver dam, and we're leading our pack horse, who is blind in his right eye, and we're crossing the beaver dam, and the pond is on our left side, and he kind of spotted this old bridge, and he took a step, and he basically stepped off the beaver dam into the pond. And so he was swimming in the middle of this beaver dam with these pack boxes on his back. And just that whole image of him struggling and swimming, and his nostrils flaring, and his breath snorting out of him. And we could see that he was losing ground. He was sinking deeper and deeper in the water. And so I said to my husband that his pack boxes are filling with water. We have to do something. And so thankfully my husband called him, Blitz, Blitz, come. And Blitz came closer to the beaver dam, and we jumped in the water and pulled him to the shore. And we were able to pull off the ropes, the diamond hitch, and empty his pack boxes. And sure enough, we were emptying out water from our boots and the boxes and our belongings. And we had to and then once Blitz didn't have the pack boxes full of water on his back anymore, then he was able to jump out and find a spot, and he happily started eating grass and seemed perfectly fine. But then we had to kind of regroup. So that scene also inspired a scene that experience also inspired a scene in my book.
Alrighty then. So good. And have you thought about writing any more books at some point in the future?
Yes, I am working on a second project. So this concept of using the community pastures and sort of looking at the history, the front end of them, not necessarily that I always dwell on the fact that it's a PFRA pasture, but it provides a focus for me. So I am working on a project that is in a pasture that's close to where we live, and it's got a military camp on it, and it's close to a Métis hunting ground and settlement, and it's close to a Dakota First Nation, and it's a pasture. So I'm quite intrigued by the history of the area and by the opportunity to explore characters who are cowboys, soldiers, and Métis, and First Nations, and see what I can come up with in terms of a story in another one.
Alrighty then. Now, you wanted to say something, Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you travel often?
Do I travel often? I travel across Western Canada mostly. I have had a few trips further south on to Mexico and Costa Rica, but mostly my traveling has been in Western Canada.
Oh, okay. So my next question is, if you can travel anywhere in the world, just like anywhere, any country, any state, etc., where would it be and why?
Oh, okay. I think Argentina has quite a lot of appeal to me. I think because of the tradition of the cowboy down there, the vaquero, and that way of life, and the landscape down there with the mountains and the grasslands in Argentina. So I've always kind of imagined that country as a interesting place to go.
Okay, that's very interesting. I can
Very fabulous.
yeah. And my next question is like, was there a point in your life where you saw yourself doing anything else besides like, you writing books, and besides you I apologize. What else did you like besides like, being an author?
Oh, I also was, I did spend quite a number of years in the helping profession. So I was a mental health worker for many years, and I worked in schools and had a private practice. And so, significant part of my life was, you know, working in helping other people with their mental health issues and their, so relationships. So yeah, I did spend considerable amount of time in university to study for that, and also to spend a lot of years work in the workforce with that profession.
Oh, okay. So like, I mean, as a kid, like, have you seen, like, before you've done all this at all, did you ever see yourself doing anything else?
Did I ever see myself doing anything else? I always saw myself as being involved, as reading. I always did some writing. I wanted to be a helper for others, and I loved horses. That's just my life. I have, of course, my family is very important to me. I have 7 grandchildren and 3 children. So, I certainly had a very active, and still do have a very active family life. I'm also very sporty. So I'm a grandmother, but I'm also pretty involved in keeping myself fit. And I did at one time participate in triathlons and do some running and fitness activities so that I could be fitter and compete more fiercely in my riding sport. So that's certainly part of my life as well. I don't run triathlons anymore. I don't have the time to train for them, but I did at one time, not too long ago.
Okay, that's pretty cool to hear. And it's like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm interested in fitness too. You know what my motivation is for keeping myself fit?
Yeah. What is it?
I don't want my stomach drooping down over my like waistband. That's my motivation.
That's a great motivation.
that that and it's like, I don't know. I don't want to look in the mirror and just like, it's just, I don't know. Plus it's like I want to be stronger, and it just brings more confidence too. So it's like that's also one of like the few motivations I have.
I think you're right on. I think being fit does help you to feel more confident. It certainly keeps me feeling more confident to do the physical activities I do. My husband and I are still pretty active riders and competing. We've just recently started a sport called polo cross, and it's a pretty fierce sport where it's like polo, and you're battling with your opponent on the field for possession of the ball and to make a score, make a goal. So yeah, you have to ride hard in that sport, and I can keep up with the younger people.
That's amazing to hear. That's amazing to hear. Hey,
Yeah.
Jame, do you have any other like questions you want to ask her?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Hello.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I'm still thinking.
Okay.
I know what it is, but it's on the top of my head.
Hmm.
It's like my brain's reloading.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. What takes a lot of time to master, but is definitely worth it?
What takes a lot of time to master and is definitely worth it?
Uh-huh.
Right. I've had a few things in my life that have taken a lot of time to master, but are definitely worth it. I think the first thing, since this interview's come by way of my writing, that I've spent a lot of time trying to master writing. It is something I've worked on for quite a long time, and put the hours in. And so it's very satisfying for me now at this point in my life to be able to read from my book and share my stories with other people and have them enjoy it. And it's come from, a long time of putting in the hours and studying how to be, really. I suppose it takes some talent and insight to be a good writer, but also there is the craft of writing and understanding, how to go about telling a good story. So that's been worth it in my life at this point. I mean, certainly other activities have spent a lot of time developing my skills as an accomplished equestrian. And I think as I've developed those skills, they also apply to many life skills. And so I help mostly women, become stronger and more confident and capable in their relationships with their horses, but that also helps them feel more empowered in their lives. So that's kind of a cool thing for me too.
Right, that's great to hear. Yeah, that's incredible.
Fabulous.
And
Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah,
Another question
absolutely.
I have for you. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, I have another question. If you can take back any mistake in your life, what would it be and why?
Oh, I think in my younger years, I spent a lot of time. I had a lot of more anxiety about failing and not, making mistakes. And I think, I guess when you look back in your life, and they kind of seem like small specks on the shore of the ocean when you think about those kinds of things. And so I wish I hadn't been so anxious about making mistakes when I was younger. I'm certainly probably a little bit more willing to be a risk taker now as I'm in my more mature years.
Okay, that's reasonable. It's like, so yeah, that's a reasonable thing to say. It's like, yeah, you wish that you took more risks when you were younger. And it's like, you were pretty much a perfectionist or just simply afraid to fail.
I think that was I have to admit that was a part of what I spent a lot of time worrying about. I don't think people saw me that way, but internally I felt that way about myself.
Like being a perfectionist, or just like
Yeah,
being afraid to fail,
kind of
or
being
both.
afraid to fail. Yeah, or so I always admired people who were able to make mistakes and kind of move on to them. So I did look for in people I sought out as mentors who did that, and I was quite impressed with people who could kind of accept their failings and shortcomings and kind of say, accept them and move on and carry on in life in a gracious way. So that's kind of been a life learning for me now. So
Okay.
Incredible.
Okay.
If you could erase one past experience, what would it be?
If I could erase a past experience?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, pretty much one that wouldn't have impacted you, or like, just mold you into the person you are today. Like a past experience that you either regret or don't regret, or like a past experience that you regret. If you can erase that and you would know that it wouldn't impact you to the person you are today, what would it be and why?
Past experience that I regret. I think I can't think of anything particularly, although I know that sometimes, I've hurt people's feelings by things I've said, and I try to walk carefully in the world and gently. I suppose this ties into not wanting to make mistakes, but there's some things I've said to people I wish I could take back probably, but part of what I feel I need to accept now is that I made those mistakes, and some bridges are burned, I guess, in relationships with people because of things I've said, but there are not many of them, and I can move on, I guess, in my life, and I have moved on in my life actually. But yeah,
that's good to hear. And the last question I have for you is, what or who inspired you to move forward with what you're doing now, and why?
That's another good question. Who inspired me?
Like either what or who.
As a young child, I think I grew up on a subsistence. Well, I didn't do all my growing up, but my earliest sort of influential years were spent outside in nature with animals. And I think those, you know, important experiences really inspired me to be where I am today. And I think that as a child, because I was isolated, and I had stories that my mom would read to me, and my dad was a storyteller, but largely animals when I was very young were my friends. And so, and my imagination was as well. I had a very lively imagination. And so I think that internal world for myself led me on to be a sensitive and intuitive kind of person who could listen and help others, and also be reflective. And so I think now that's why I'm in the setting I'm in. Again, I feel connected back to those early memories of my childhood as I go out on the, you know, the landscape here, and can put my arms around my horses, and you know, listen, feel a cat purring in my arms, and see nature around me. Right now the wildlife is around, and the geese are gathering for winter. So those are very connective experiences from when I was a very young child, and I feel very privileged to be able to still connect to that sense of myself from so long ago.
Alrighty then. Sounds good. And that is all we have for this episode. It was great having you here, Gayle, talking about your work as an equestrian riding coach and your many books and many things else. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much.
Anytime. And until next time, stay tuned. I mean, stay opinionated.